Groban Quinn has been one of the hottest stories of Guardian spring training. 2 games into this past spring, in his first 5 at bats, he has 3 home runs and 6 RBIs. So obviously, a lot of talk has been about him lately. We'll see where it goes down the end of spring training, let alone the regular season. But I thought he was an up and coming rookie. I did not realize he had been in the league since 2016. He'd spent some time in Philadelphia as well as other places. But it's very interesting to see him be developing along this Guardians team. Right now, seems like they're off to a pretty decent start. I mean, you take some of the action that you've been able to see from Cleveland so far this spring. What have you been kind of taking from it?
I don't read too much into spring training for the veterans that are going to be on the team, right?
Sure.
The other day, Zach got gave up 5 runs, but he was also working on a new curveball. That's what this is for guys like this. At the same time, for someone like Quinn or George Valera, may I add, or these other top rookies for the Guardians, this is their time to shine. Now, what's funny is there are pitchers in our organization, Mitch, one that is on the shelf right now in Daniel Espino, and other top arms we have that I heard yesterday during the spring training rundown from Andre Knott, that the Guardians front office will not put out there in front of Tito because they know he is going to want to keep them on the roster, and it's ultimately going to take up someone's spot, much like they did with Shane Bieber a while ago. They did not let him come to camp with a major league invite when he was still up and coming through the organization, because obviously money does play a factor. We know that's something with baseball, and the union and everything's been fighting. But we are a factory of pitching. Look at the pitchers that the Guardians organization has churned out over the past number of years. They want to keep those guys down there until they're absolutely needed, let them get work instead of exposing them to big league bats right away in April and May. I think I'm more so looking at the young guys that you have coming up, like a George Valera, John Skees Noel, 2 guys right off the top of my head that are going to play a big role for the Guardians, possibly this season or possibly in the next 2-3 years. I want to see how they handle this, how they go about their business. And so far, some of these guys have really shown out. You look at somebody like Quinn, you mentioned the hottest hitter in camp right now. Is there a possibility he makes the opening day roster? Who knows? We know that they're not afraid to put rookies out there or guys that need to prove themselves out there. We saw last year, but I'm not reading into a whole lot if Jose has a rough camp, or if Josh Bell has a rough camp, or some of these other guys, Rosario, Jimenez. I'm more so look at the pitchers, how they're feeling, and do they stay healthy? That's the number one thing. Can they stay healthy?
That's the biggest thing. And even if they don't, you still have a number of prospects that it is seeming like the Guardians just stockpile these guys. And for good reason. They can find the right people to bring up when needed. And a lot of them can develop into quite quality ball players. We saw that last year, the likes of Oscar Gonzalez in the mix. Who'd have thought he would be a significant part of the team before the start of the 2022 campaign? I mean, I'm looking at some of the stuff right here, and you're looking at what potential names the Guardians could keep on stockpiling, or that we could keep an eye on for the upcoming year. You look at some of the pitchers in there. I'm very curious to see which starter could break out through this minor league system. Now, the biggest name that I've been really focusing on is Hunter Gaddis. Now, Hunter Gaddis had some struggles with his delivery last season. A lot of teams were able to just tee off on him, but he's got his velocity around the mid 90s, so there's at least that. He also has a good changeup that can work alongside potentially into the Guardians bullpen. I know we mentioned starters, but that's a guy who I think could be in the mix should one of our guys go down with injuries. You also mentioned the names like Doug Nikhazy, who is a 23-year-old left-hander, Ross Carver, 23-year-old right-hander, Ethan Hankins, 22-year-old right-hander, Jack Leftwich, 24-year-old righty, Will Dion, 22-year-old lefty. I'm very interested in seeing which Guardians pitcher specifically will be infiltrating the roster, because I do think there might be some mix-ups this year. I did wonder going into last season if we'd see the likes of Zach Plesac be dealt, how long Aaron Savali would be with the team, but you can't say anything definite right now because we're only 2 games into spring. We still have to wait a few more weeks for the start of the regular season, and I don't know. I'm curious to see where Cleveland decides to go just with its opening day roster alone.
And you have to remember, Mitch, we've seen it in years past. The opening day roster, for the most part, does not mean anything.
Yeah.
How many guys have we seen on this opening day roster in Cleveland that were gone within a couple months? We had Hanley Ramirez. We had Carlos Gonzalez on our opening day roster one year. Um, you're going to have Mitch. I truly believe I think the starting lineup is pretty much set in stone already. As long as everybody stays healthy, you're going to see a team ran back last year of almost everybody. Insert Mike Zunino into the starting catcher role. Bo Naylor will be the backup, I would assume. Maybe he gets the start. Josh Bell will be at first base now on opening day, but I think our opening day roster will pretty much stay the same throughout the regular season as long as everybody stays healthy. I also think that with how much depth we have, both outfield, middle infield wise, and then pitching wise, that if a guy gets hurt, we don't need to really worry. Or if a guy struggles to perform for the first couple of months, they're going to get yanked. I think it's safe to say someone like Aaron Savali or Zach Plesac Mitch, who, yes, this goes bigger than performance or deeper than performance. We know he's had some off-field antics. We know he's not Tito's buddy. But if Plesac doesn't get his stuff figured out, I think him and Savali are the two that are on the hot seat for potential replacement and then to be traded. And that might not seem fair right now as I say this in the last day of February, but it's a business. It's what happens. And I ultimately have faith that if that's the way the Guardians go, how can you blame them after their track record of everything recently? And well, I'm excited to see Logan Allen, not the one that we've seen in the majors the past couple of years, younger Logan Allen. It's also another pitcher. Gavin Williams, I believe. And Mitch, I also find it interesting that a lot of these guys in the minors, we have a couple solid left-handed pitchers. We're up here right now at the major league level. Our starting rotation is all right-handed pitchers.
Yep.
And for the most part, it's always been, I still remember we got Scott Kazmir years ago.
Yes.
We needed a lefty pitcher. He came in. It was more of a minor league contract. Let's see how he looks. He looked fine, came up here, pitched well, went and signed somewhere else the next season. This could be where the Guardians are going to incorporate left-handed pitchers now. We have some studs down there in the minors. Or Mitch, this is also where they could package those guys and go trade for somebody else if some of the rookies from last year don't live up and improve off their rookie season. I think Stephen Quinn is going to be fine no matter what because he's a contact hitter. I think everyone's biggest question is Oscar Gonzalez because he's so big, because we know he has the potential for power. We know he can put the ball in play like the Guardians want to do. I'm not as worried as other people though, Mitch, because the shift is gone. And now some of those other hits that you saw from other players last year that would have a shift on, like an Andres Jimenez, are going to get through. Jose Ramirez is going to only benefit more from this because they would put a shift on the right side of the infield when he was hitting left-handed. That's gone now too. Oscar Gonzalez may be the same way with how the infield positioned him. Maybe it wasn't a full-blown shift, but maybe they can't rotate as much as they want to the left side. If they thought he was a pull hitter, he went backside a lot last year. Oscar Gonzalez is the player to watch to see if he can stay with where he was from his rookie year into his sophomore season. I would be stunned if we have this conversation after a month or two in the season and our biggest worry is Stephen Quinn, because when you're a contact hitter like Quinn, that necessarily doesn't go away. And he may have already had his slump. Keep in mind last year, his opening month, he was the best hitter in baseball when it came to swing and miss rate because he didn't swing and miss. Then he had a drop off because pitchers made the adjustment, but good hitters are able to rebound, which is what Quinn did. And I'm so excited for Stephen Quinn this season because yes, I know Julio Rodriguez got Rookie of the Year, but Quinn, I believe, still deserves some more recognition in being in that category with Rutschman and the J-Rod show out in Seattle. Stephen Quinn is the guy that makes this thing go. Leadoff hitter, contact hitter, speed, and he should be stealing a lot of bases this year with some of these rule changes.
I'm not going to lie. The whole time you were going on your monologue there, I kept thinking, oh my God, we had Carlos Gonzalez at one point. Oh, 2019. It was that like that man was so good in Colorado, man. And that's what you mentioned, Scott Kazmir. That was the year where the Indians made all those signings of not just Nick Swisher and Michael Bourne, but also a bunch of minor league and cast-offs. It's like, oh yeah, Jason Giambi, yeah, let's get him. Daisuke Matsuzaka, yeah, let's get him. Scott Kazmir, sure. Scott Kazmir is the one I couldn't believe resurrected his own career, became an all-star with the Oakland A's again. Because the last memory I had of him was throwing the ball wayward in Game 6 of the ALCS 2009 against the Yankees, against the Angels. But as far as those MLB rules you talked about, we're 2 games into, 3 days in, I should say, to the new rules being showcased, and we've already had the pitch clock rule affect the final outcome of a game. I didn't think we'd get this early into it. I know you mentioned before there was a college game, and no, this was the first one where everyone took notice. It was that Braves Red Sox game that ended in a tie because the batter did not approach the plate in time. The umpire had to call it. The league even came out and said like that was the right call to make. It's fascinating now that we have to, not that we have to, but it's fascinating that that call now can happen, can affect the outcome of a game, to where if you're batting with 2 outs in the ninth and the bases are loaded and you're not careful with 2 strikes, you can just be called for a 3rd strike and you got to walk back to that dugout, not realizing that you had to approach the plate in time, or it's vice versa for the pitcher. Even, you might get called on a game winning balk and you didn't even approach the mound. That's what's crazy about it. But a lot of people have been raving about the fact that games seem to be having some fat trim from them. I mean, the average I've seen was about 2.5 to a little less than 3 hours. So it's still doesn't make them like the most in and out games you could see in sports, but they are a step forward from the potentially 3.5 to 4 hour slogs you might see from a scoreless game or a blowout. That's what I like about it. I've seen some pitchers even really rave about it. Max Scherzer says they get to kind of control the pace of the game, and that's really cool for them. I mean, what are your takes on what we've seen from the pitch clock in these first couple of games?
Well, let's ask Max Scherzer again once he gives up a triple in the right center field gap and has to back up third. And as soon as he gets the ball, the clock starts and he has to get right back on the mound and throw while his heart rate's up. Let's ask him then, because in spring training, this is low stakes environment. Mitch, people are a creature of habit. I'm sure you have your own habits. I have my own habits, and people really don't like change. The MLB didn't change one thing with bigger bases. The MLB didn't change 2 things with no shifts. They didn't change 3 things with the pitch clock, or 4 things with a hitter's clock, or, oh, wait, no, it was 5 things, because now you also can't pick off as much or else it's a balk. To change all that in one off season and put it all in at once, it's going to be ugly baseball. Teams are going to win and lose games in the first couple months of the season because of these rule changes. And I hate what's going to happen. Now, obviously, it's a ways away. They could get back into, a habit of things as this goes on. But could you imagine tied game, bottom of the ninth, Jose Ramirez up, bases loaded, 3-2 count in the ALDS at home, and he gets rung up because he wasn't in the box in time? Mitch, I think the fans would storm the field. I think they would attack the umpires. They've implemented way too much. And pitching, yes, Scherzer likes to, like he said, he likes to pretty much say they dictate everything. You have to be able to flush your mind, right? Playing baseball, it's one pitch at a time. That's how it always is. As a hitter, all right, cool. That strike got called. All right, cool. Let me step out of the box, compose myself, get my heart rate under control, and flush it on to the next pitch. You don't have that much time anymore. And neither does a pitcher. And so my whole thing with giving up a triple into the right center field gap, obviously a pitcher has to back up third on that. If the ball trickles away, he's running, his heart rate's up, he gets the ball, boom, clock starts, get back on the mound, let's go. You're asking a lot out of players, especially veterans that aren't used to this. It's not going to be fun right away. I personally don't like they put them all in at once. That's my original point. I love the bigger bases. I don't think that's a bad change at all. I kind of think they needed to be a little bit bigger, but to implement all this at once is going to be chaotic at times. I think there's going to be people that are kind of confused at times. I just hate it because I truly believe a pitcher should be able to take his time on the mound. A hitter should be able to step out of the box when he wants to compose himself, because the higher stakes you go, your heart rate picks up. You need to be able to take a deep breath and collect yourself. And now, a lot of people don't even know this new rule exists, Mitch, that you get 2 pickoff attempts to a base. If you are after those 2 and you throw over again for a 3rd time and you're unsuccessful again, it's a balk. That runner moves to second. If there's any other runners on base, they move up a base 2.
Right.
The MLB wants to see steals increase to create more play in the game and more suspense. I get it, but come on. What are we doing here? Yes, I agree. It's egregious when a guy throws over 6 straight times, especially if it's somebody that has no speed that's not going anywhere. I get that. But It's too much at once. It really is. And you're going to see teams win and lose games early on in the season because they're not used to these rules.
It's basically giving the runners the green light because you know
Yeah.
that they're not going to throw over. I get that. I do like, however, that they're trying to implement or incentivize stealing bases in that because that's part of what makes baseball quicker. It makes it more exciting. It makes it more appealing to the eye. As far as you mentioned, because I still think that the pitch clock is a little too fast. If we get it to about 20 seconds with no one on base, 25 seconds with a man on base, give the pitcher some time to get back to the mound, compose themselves. That I think would be more natural than what we're seeing right now, where it's definitely quicker paced. And I can kind of appreciate that, but it still kind of feels like it's like, okay, pitch, all right, pitch, okay, pitch, okay. Whereas if you had 20 seconds to be like, pitch, okay, we're all set here, we're all set here, all set here, pitch. And they mentioned in an ESPN article about Scherzer's love for the new rule. He was facing Michael Chavis from Washington. Uh, he ended up singling to right during an at bat, but it was immaterial to Scherzer because he felt he had imposed his will on the situation because Scherzer, Chavis stepped out of the box when he felt Scherzer was taking too long, and that was fine with Scherzer because he held the ball for more than 10 seconds before delivering the next pitch, as Chavis had to remain in the batter's box no matter what. And he said it's a cat and mouse game. There's rules, and he'll operate within whatever the rules are. And I can see somebody like Scherzer, who's pitches a little more intense, a little more quicker paced, can appreciate that. When you have guys who really want to take their time and build themselves up, they're not going to like this. Even batters, I'm a little surprised by. Some have not been as in tune with the new rule. I know that Aaron Judge said he kind of likes it, but at the same time, this might be a rule I think that will benefit the pitchers more than it will the hitters because the pitchers have the ball.
I would agree with that 100%. And it's all, as a hitter, you don't get to swing at a pitch until that pitch is thrown. So the baseball has always been in the hand of the pitchers, right? I would say it's more times than not in the hand of the pitchers, depending on who the hitter is. They might have the upper hand. Mitch, the other thing that people aren't talking about here, the umpires have a say in this too. Why I hate this rule. Because every umpire, for the most part, has a different type of strike zone. Some have a bigger strike zone, some have smaller strike zones. As a hitter or as a pitcher, you are not going to get every call every time when it comes to balls and strikes. To me, as a hitter, that is when you would step out of the box. All right, that wasn't a strike. I'm not going to chase that. Or maybe it's two strikes in the same spot. All right, now I have to chase that. You have to reset, change your mentality, change your approach. And now you're not really getting all that time to do that. And to me, that's why I kind of hate it. If that's why they got rid of the shift at the same time too, so be it. I don't think that's why. I think MLB just wants to see more hits all over the field rather than just home run or strikeout that we were accustomed to seeing over the past couple of years. But there's going to be times that players cannot step out or step off and collect themselves after a bad call, because if they do, they're either getting penalized with a ball called on the batter or, as the batter, a strike called on you. And I don't know how it's going to go. Right now, as we record this, while it's still spring training, I hate it. I might end up loving it. I know I never loved the runner at second base in extra innings. I still am not a huge fan of that, especially considering they're not going to that format once the playoffs start.
Yep.
Like
it's stupid. I know. It's stupid.
Same with the overtime rules in the NFL. You can end in a tie. If you score a touchdown right away in the regular season, game over. But in the playoffs, you score a touchdown, the other team gets a chance. Like, no, make it all the way around one way or another. I don't understand that. I will say there was a highlight surfacing on social media. It was the Dodgers and the Cubs on really the first instance of why these rules and the clock have been put on. And in the bottom, it was how many home runs can Jose Altuve, or how many inside the park home runs can Jose Altuve hit before the next pitch is thrown. I believe he made it around 6.5 or 7 times, which that's a long time. But not every single baseball game has something like that where a guy.
Yeah. That was a playoff game too, right?
Yep,
I thought so.
That's my whole thing. That's high stakes environment. That's win or go home time. That's we're either going on to go to the whatever round it was, either the World Series or the Championship Series, or our season's over. You should be allowed to take your time. And I swear, I'm going to be so upset if they get to the playoffs and say, hey, this was a success, but because it's higher stakes, we're going to get rid of them because it's playoff baseball. Then why would you have them in place? I'm not saying they've said that, but I'm not going to be shocked one bit if this commissioner puts that type of rule in place, it's not going to surprise me one bit, because Rob Manfred just continues to make up rules as this thing goes on, or choose to where he wants to put them in or take them out. And they still have not addressed their biggest issue, which is the blackouts and everything. I hate it. I hate it. And the only other thing I'll say is I listened to Christian Yelich, former MVP, currently on the Brewers. He had a couple injuries last year. I think when he's healthy, he's still one of the best players. He brought up the shift, right? You now have to have two infielders on the same side of second base.
Yes.
All times, feet on the dirt. He mentioned that he thinks there are going to be teams that try to get around this. He mentioned, like I've mentioned to you and other of my friends before, teams might move a third outfield or move their outfielder over into shallow right. He said he thinks there's a possibility teams are going to try to do a motion play where they send the shortstop in motion to get to the right side of the infield while the pitcher is in motion. There's nothing against that. And to be honest, the team he pointed out to try it didn't surprise me at all. He said it'd probably be the Tampa Bay Rays. And honestly, I think that's a great team to pick to try something like that. But there's nothing in baseball that says you can't put a player in motion to do something like that. We're going to see some people try some different type of things. I'm going to see around more left fielder to right, shallow right field now, because there was no rules in that. And there's definitely loopholes. And Mitch, if you're not on the mound in time, it's a ball. Are pitchers going to take balls on purpose to collect themselves? I think so. I really do. I think there's a very great possibility pitchers will not get on the mound right away if they're not ready and take a called ball, or pitchers might take their time for 4 straight pitches to get a walk to allow somebody in the bullpen to warm up, because now the time for a bullpen pitcher to get ready is shorter, because now pitching coaches and managers only have so much time to get out to the mound to make a change or a meeting. There's loopholes MLB to not think about that you're going to see in effect as soon as the season starts. And I can't wait to see that, because I think the MLB is going to freak out a little bit.